So when we get started this kind of week, right, we're going to focus a little bit on women in policing issues. So something that we have to keep in mind, right, is that if we think about the prototypical police department in America, a few things that we know. So we know that with most police departments in the United States, they're typically male, right? In the sense of like they are hire mostly men, to the point where 14% of all police officers are female, which is kind of bizarre to think about, right? Because if you like consider like basic police practice, right? Female officers, right, are 14%, yet about half of the US population is women, right? So we have like this like disparity and like equity that's like coming in, right? Because we don't really like what understands it, what makes it happen. We also know that it's related to this, right? If we think about this police department issue, we also know that with the 14% rate, even fewer women are supervisors. So, like, you know, a sergeant or a lieutenant, a commander, based off it, right? So, what ends up happening within policing kind of practice, right, is that we end up seeing that there's less promotion, there's less representation, both within the ranks and as long and in like a supervisor role, right? Now, the part that's kind of like bizarre about it, right, is that over the last probably about 50 years, right? So over the last 50 years, there has been a market push to recruit women. And yet, what ends up happening, right? We know that there's been like this effort. It has been there even been times when city police departments, such as the Los Angeles Police Department, have been sued because they have not hired as many women, right? But even then, it's been pretty stagnant, right? To the point where, say, like in 1997, 7% of all officers were female, and as of 2020, that's up to 14% are female. So the part that's interesting about this, right, is that so even though there's been this concentrated effort, there has that has been going on to hire female officers. Even though this rate has doubled since 1997, right, it's still like a pretty small fraction, right? Now, it isn't to say that there is a quote unquote correct number, right? But it does lead some questions, right, about why women, why is there less female representation in policing? And what are the consequences of that? And, or really like, what are the benefits of that as well, right? So what is it that makes it policing kind of policing, right? So if we think about this from like a different perspective, right? We'll think about from like from like a personal kind of experience, right? If I think about a police officer, nice stick figure with this light blue kind of thing, right? I can think of every stop that I've had by someone, whether in a car or I've talked to on the street, right? And so in those kinds of encounters, right? They have always been male, right? I cannot think of a time where like doing like police business, like if I've been stopped like on a traffic point, or anything like that. They've always been male. And then it's the typical, you have like the shaved head, and you also, like they, some of them, like there's been a variety of body shapes, right? But they have like the polarized sunglasses. And they kind of like look, bigger, right? So we'll say like more muscle kind of type, right? Maybe, possibly, right? There's, probably this look where they look, like physically intimidating, perhaps. So when I think of this as police officer, right, this is like my reference point. And again, this is not to say that this is correct, right? That is not what I'm saying here, but I'm saying this is my reference point um, as to like why, like what I think of when a police officer, because that's based off of the encounters that I've had, right? There's no reason it has to look like this, right? It doesn't mean like this is the correct or kind of thing for it, right? But this is like my mental reference point. So why do we care about this then, right? Well, if we think about, having something related to it, right? We know that police are going to be, at the end of the day, right? They are public servants, right? They are employed by the government, and they answer calls and stuff like that. And so we really, if we think about like responding, if you're a public servant, like you respond to community needs. If you want to be responsive to different ways of life, if you want to be responsive to different kinds of people, if you want to have basically more equity in public service, then public agencies should be more representative of the people they serve, right? Because you're able to respond better to that, right? So in the case of women, right, like, just for this, right, why is it this there's a special phrase for this, right? So why is what is what and why is the symbolic representation of a police department? Meaning, if we have, white male police officers, what does this communicate to possible applicants or recruitments or about a police department or how things work? Applicants and then employees as well, right? And so that's what we'll kind of default work into some of these issues, but this is kind of what this series of videos is about what's in this place, right? So with that, we'll take a pause here, and then we'll pick this up in the next.